see a little pop-up on your screen that says this meeting is now being recorded. And I am going to start from the order of my list for roll call, which is not in alphabetical order. It starts with Samara.
Here.
Thank you. Karen.
Here.
Cassandra.
Here.
Megan.
Here.
Mahubo.
Here.
Kosar.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Viviana.
Here.
Amanda.
Here.
Perfect. Did I miss, is either Jason or Jose Luis joined us? I don't believe so. So I think those are all of our members. I should say, let the record show that we do have a quorum. And if folks have the agenda open, I sent a link to it in the chat. If people have any questions or amendments to the agenda, we should do that now. And then if you also see on the agenda, there's a link to the October 26th meeting notes. If you haven't had a chance to look through those, if you want to scroll through them really quick, and then we can do a collective vote to approve the agenda and the meeting notes from October 26th. So I'll just give a few seconds for people to look at those.
Can I ask a question, Kelly? I usually come in by my computer. This is Karen. I'm coming in by my phone. Is there a way for me to see the agenda on my phone? I don't know how I would do that.
Not through Microsoft Teams, but I did send out an email with the link to the agenda. So if you're able to multitask on your phone, you could potentially open it that way.
Okay, thank you. I'll try.
Otherwise, I can just read you the items that are listed for tonight's agenda.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm trying to find it. But...
Yeah, sure, no problem. So we have under discussion items to prepare for the joint Northside Southside meeting. It's coming up in December. We can discuss whether to have or cancel our December 21st meeting as a second meeting of the month, and then to discuss next steps on priorities that were identified in the survey that we did at our October meeting. And then there are several announcements that are listed, which folks can read over at their leisure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that we looked over the minutes.
Perfect. And then for procedure, if somebody is ready to make a motion to adopt the agenda and the minutes, you can do that. And then we'll need a second. And then if there's any questions or conversation, then folks can introduce it after there's been a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion, Cassandra, to accept the agenda, the minutes.
And I'll second the motion that Cassandra has brought up around adopting the minutes and accepting them.
Great. Is there any discussion or questions, clarifications, concerns? Okay. Hearing none, then I'm going to quickly call a roll. And if you approve the adoption of the agenda and the minutes from October, then just say yes. If you don't, say no. If for some reason you need to abstain, you can say abstain. So starting from the top, Samara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I have to call on having some technical difficulties, but yes.
Wonderful, thanks. Karen?
Yes.
Cassandra?
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I heard you. That looks like Thank you. Megan?
Yes.
Mahubo,
Yes.
Kosar,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Viviana,
Yes.
and Amanda.
Yes.
Perfect. Well done, everyone. All right, I'm going to hand it back to, let's see, I think Kosar.
Yeah, so based off of our last meeting in October, and based off of the survey results that we ended up receiving, folks were really interested in having a conversation with the Northside Green Zone folks and really figuring out how their equity scorecard is going to take place, what the development of that looks like, and the criteria. So they sent us a criteria for development. It's a document of 8 pages where they define the various different languages that they're using, as well as the different elements of what criteria of development that they will be reviewing and that they will be emphasizing on their equity development scorecard. You will find that hyperlinked in the agenda that's on the city system. And Kelly, I'm unable to share things on the chat for some reason. Is there any way you can attach or connect the hyperlink of the Northside Green Zone development criteria for folks to review? Because I think it's essential for us to review that during this meeting and maybe prepare some questions and different priority items that we want to discuss with the Northside Green Zones during that meeting in December. And are there any, resources we can provide to support their work, or are there things that we would like to discuss with them on the December 9th meeting? So I'm opening, the conversation for folks now.
Yeah, would it also be helpful for me to share my screen with the document?
Well, I'm unable to do that as well. I'm not sure why.
All right. All right, so folks should be seeing my screen. It has in blue text, it says definitions at the top.
Yep. So in the document, I believe the Northside Green Zones have defined what community and adequately resourced community engagement looks like, how that's best defined in North Minneapolis, especially in the Green Zones, and really affirming what the definition of community is around the work that's been happening around the Upper Harbor Terminal. And I think that might have been the driving force of a lot of this work and other development projects that might be existing in their ecosystem currently. So it is interesting to see that community generally refers to people who live, work, pray, and play in the Northside Green Zones. I think this is similar to the definition we were utilizing around community when we were working with Shalini and Alejandra earlier in the year. So I think there is some type of alignment and some type of parallel around how they define community and how we define community in our work. But feel free to, contest to that if folks don't feel the same way. They also go into the specificities around the residents and small local businesses that are owned by BIPOC groups by defining, the Jewish community that has had an identity in the Northside community for years and still have an existing thread there. The Hmong community, Indigenous folks, and Black folks in the area. And then recognizing the economic exploitation of the area as well as the systematic oppression from government entities. They go further into recognizing how does adequately resourced community engagement occur, and detailing that by stating that engaging the community means more than just open houses or mailings to the neighborhood association. To them, engagement means going to where people already gather and have conversations. So really showing up in an authentic way, whether it's showing up to the movie nights hosted by community organizations or other activities. They also define it by building long-term relationships with community and working with them in ongoing ways, not just when a decision is being made. So having engagement occur prior to the required engagement period that a development project usually requires, whether they're getting state or federal funds. Supporting community members' ability to participate in gathering by providing food, childcare, transportation, and compensation for time and expertise. So really being able to find ways to invest in community through capital or social capital investments that really align with community needs. So those are kind of the definitions that they have utilized to really build the foundation around what this equity scorecard would look like. They have also detailed what an equitable request for proposal will look like in their community, detailing what community participation will look like and how the city shall conduct itself when conducting community engagement during an RFP process, requiring that the proposal content should be community driven. So when the creation of an RFP is happening, that it really entail and detail community needs and community priorities during that process, and describing how the project aligns with the 12 Northern Green Zone goals. So I think, if we were thinking of developing a similar process, we would make sure that it works with our, Southside Green Zone goals and our Southside Green Zone priorities that we develop through our working plan. So that is interesting that they call that out really early on. Looking at the third page, they also go into what the land ownership process looks like, how land should be leased to developers and not sold. So that really definitely changes the ownership characteristics and patterns that we see currently, where land currently isn't subjected to detailing that a developer is only to lease. Usually developers have the right to own the land as well as develop on it. So getting equity from those two different tiers. And if they state that if land is to be sold, community gets the first right of refusal of sale. And Kelly, do you want to go into describing what does that usually look like from the city's end of around right of refusal?
Yeah, at this point, I think the city has looked at policies for this, or there are groups that are organizing around the idea of community members having first right of refusal, but I don't think it exists as a policy or a tool for the city. One thing that the city has done recently is that if an affordable housing development is going to be sold, that they have to notify the city. And that is partly so that the city can bring in other affordable housing providers or entities who would be interested in maintaining that property as affordable housing. So the city is looking at other ways to do that. And so the idea for this is that it would take that a step further, and it would really say for any project that needs to be developed by a private entity, that basically the land would be offered to the community members first if they were interested in purchasing or leasing it for development. And if the community didn't want it, then it could be offered to an outside developer. I think one of the things that we haven't done yet is looked at research for examples of this, but that could be a next step. And I should also say with this, these recommendations, you'll see that there is a watermark on it because these are draft. The Northside Green Zone definitely wants Southside input on these, and if they're interested in bringing these recommendations forward jointly as both bodies of the Green Zones. And one of the next steps would then be to work with city council leadership and folks within the city's planning department to figure out how to actually implement any of these different recommendations. And so this is sort of the the goals and the desired outcomes, but there's still a lot of like detail and minutia that would need to be figured out over time to actually turn this into policy.
Thank you for adding to that piece, because I was a bit fuzzy on what the history looked like and kind of where that maybe thought process was coming from. And then the piece around developers should be required to bring forward a cooperative and collective ownership model or a succession plan showing how the project will transfer ownership to the community. So really creating some type of bottom-up process rather than top-down, where, you know, usually where developer ownership and equity serves only the entity that is developing, but maybe looking at it from a more equitable standpoint of providing cooperative and collective ownership models to the community that is already existing within that community and environment, so that there is some type of investment coming in. The next subject matter was process, value of federal, community, state, and international research throughout the decision-making process. So I'm making that the assumption that including those various different elements throughout the process of making decisions when a process is occurring around an RFP development, or whether it's the decision making of it, really incorporating the data and the information that already exists. And then there should be no geographic limit for developers. Many RFPs are only released to a local newspaper, but a preference for local developers. And then multiple proposals should be required, and rather than just asking for one to meet the need of an RFP requirement to be considered as, you know, complete, or to meet the need of that RFP request. The fourth page being sale of city-owned land. Programs that sell single parcels of land for development or housing or other uses. The pieces that were highlighted here is community participation and program design and review. So being a community-driven process where the creations of goals, desired outcomes of the land sale programs are community-oriented in process and design. They also note that the program design should describe how they align with the 12 Northern Green Zone goals. So if we are to partner up on, you know, an equity development scorecard or a criteria for development scorecard, I think it would be important to highlight that, you know, the Southside Green Zone working plan or our goals and our priorities are definitely a part of those different entities that need to be aligned with during program design or development or overall RFP during the RFP process as well. The other piece is the land ownership. If land shall be sold, community gets first right of refusal. So again, refusal of sale. So again, that piece. I think this is just a repetition of what was included in the other piece. I think the new piece is the community benefits agreement shall include illegal ramifications or consequences that can be enforced. So language to hold developers in the city accountable for the development that occurs on a site within community infrastructure. The sixth page goes into planning processes and how community participation should look like. So once again, I think that's a repetition of language that, you know, regardless, it should be community oriented, community driven, and really reflect the goals and desired outcomes of the community throughout the entire planning process. And then the next piece is development review and business licensing. So within CPED, there's business licensing and review processes that are required for any development project, as well as, you know, whether a new community business is coming in and they're asking for a liquor license or an operating license, that usually goes through the CPED zoning board, as well as planning commission or heritage preservation commission. Those pieces just definitely relate to what the particular project is. So they're requesting that there is a change to the staff guidance and development review, that they consider how the development aligns with the 12 Northern Green Zone goals, specifically considering the following issues: of the environmental impact of this particular license, the social impact, how equity is being played in that piece, is environmental justice being considered, the economic wealth building of that element, transportation impact. So what is the volume of traffic that is being driven into this project and being, projected by this project? What is the emission? And then gentrification. So I think this is really around how has this program come to be because of displaced persons, and will it cause an increase in property values that continue to pressure pressure out low income residents? I would, I guess, interpret that as, how does the particular project that is coming in, whether it's a cafe or a boutique, how does that really align with community identity and characteristics? Does that lead to the removal of the community that already existed, the character that already existed, and ultimately lead to the displacement of the peoples and causes that already existed in that space? And then alternately, the north side green zones may have recommendations for ordinance changes that affect how development review or the boards are conducted. So I think that they would ultimately provide recommendations on different ordinance designs, but they haven't detailed what that is yet in the draft document. The 8th and final page goes into incentives and finance programs. So that's funding, financing, technical assistance, and employment training for private housing and businesses. They detail that the city must be intentional in letting the community know when developers apply for public funds, such as tax incentive funding, am I defining that correctly, TIF, and others? So those are federally funded programs that are pass-throughs within the city that developers can usually apply for. They usually have different criterias, but it would be important for community members to maybe have a stake in that, as they state in their document. Community participation in program design and review details similarly what was copied before around program goals and desired outcomes, around funding and technical assistance needing to match around what community needs are, and program design needs to also detail and have a place to uphold the 12 Northern Green Zone goals. So that pretty much goes over what the 8-page document is at its draft stage. And I'm opening it for folks' comments, feedback, thoughts on, what we could provide in guidance or insight on that December meeting, or, what our thoughts are around if we want to pursue a partnership around this work as well.
This is incredible, for one. I just put it in the chat because I didn't know if we were going to get there or if I could find it first. But Kelly, do you have an easy link or a way to share the Northside 12 goals?
Yeah, I will. They're listed in the enabling resolution for the Northside Green Zone, so I'll grab that online and drop the link in there in the chat.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Because I guess I'm just trying to think through a little bit of like, how much do those overlap? Do we need to adjust, or where do those align for certain or not? I'm sure they do align fairly closely, but
yeah, there's strong alignment with Southside Green Zone goals for sure. I think there's just like a couple extra ones that they established.
Sure.
Hi, this is Samara. I've been having some technical difficulties, so I've missed a few things, but I'm curious, like, who who is this for? Like, who's the audience that's supposed to receive this?
So for one, I just put up on the screen the 12 goals for the Northside Green Zone for those who are on their computers or phones and can see that through the app. And then for others, I can include the link in a follow-up email. To answer your question, Samara, so the Northside Green Zone, it has drafted these as recommendations to the city. And so the next step is to get some more input on them from Southside Green Zone and potentially some other community members, and then take them to the city. And that will, at least a first step be talking with staff within the planning department who have jurisdiction over all these different areas, whether it's developing requests for proposals, selling land, going through business licensing and permit review and things like that. All of those fall within different offices within the planning department and economic development. And so be working with staff to figure out how to actually implement these. It may take policy change, which would then involve city council members. It may be able to be done administratively. I think it kind of varies. So it'll be kind of working with different staff within the planning and economic development, depending on the recommendation. So, it's not a guarantee that just because these recommendations are being brought forward, they're just going to be done immediately and implemented. This is a major request that the Green Zones, Northside Green Zone, is bringing forward. This is like really the first big ask coming out of the Green Zones, and so that's, hopefully that answers your question about like who it would be going to. Right now it's coming to the Southside Green Zone for all of your input.
Yes, yeah, that definitely answers my question. And I guess like a follow-up too is how, is this like basically like their version of, like our work plan that we worked on, or like would we be able to integrate some things from our work plan, or are they kind of separate, a little bit separate of goals?
This is like one of the sort of action items from their work plan. So they have a work plan similar to the Southside work plan. I can also drop the link for that in the chat, and that they worked on over the last couple of years. And this is one of the action items or recommendations from that work plan that they're moving forward with implementation.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I think one of the other questions for folks to consider is that this joint Northside Southside meeting is going to be the first time that your groups come together for a joint meeting since the Green Zones have existed. So this is kind of like momentous. And this is one thing that we could discuss, but I would also kind of ask yourselves, like, what would you like to get out of a joint meeting? Like, what do you want? Do you have questions that you have for Northside Green Zone? Do you want to present something about Southside to the Northside Green Zone? What goals do you have for that gathering?
This is Karen. I just want to say one thing. I may be running out of energy here on my phone, so I'll just say this quickly, and then if I go off, I'll come back as soon as I can get plugged in. I think some of the most interesting things that they were discussing was the issue of collective ownership and community ownership, and I think I'm really interested in knowing how we can talk about that together. And one of the goals for me would be that the Southside and the Northside join together in terms of helping the city come up with the policies that are needed to support all the different parts of what they are talking about and what we've been talking about, because I think together we could be a lot stronger. And one question I had, Kelly, you mentioned earlier which part of the city responds to this, and I didn't quite hear it.
It's community planning and economic development. They're a very large department, and so within the recommendations for this development criteria would touch many different divisions within that larger department.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I just think that what they're aiming for is really parts that are really amazing and very challenging to the status quo, and so I'm interested in us working together, especially for the things that sounded to me like environmental justice and affordable housing, especially those two. Thank you.
Hi, this is Samara again. I mean, I think for me at our joint meeting, well, obviously I'd be interested in taking some time just to get to, make sure we can have enough time for like introductions and getting to know everyone. And then I'm curious, like, what we'll end up talking about later tonight with kind of continuing to narrow down and talking about our goals and, maybe seeing, because I would definitely be interested in, helping them continue this draft that they've sent us, but then seeing if there's anything that we could use their feedback or support from on our end as well. Maybe that's something we can keep in mind as we have our conversations later tonight.
This is Amanda. I guess a question with regards to that conversation or the meeting with the Northside. Have they seen our work plan, or is that something that we would bring to share at the meeting or at that time?
They have not had any sort of presentation on it. Both of the Northside and Southside Green Zone work plans are available on the city's website, and I can drop that link in here, the Green Zone's webpage. But yes, similar to how you have not had a presentation on their work plan, similarly they have not. So yeah, that could be something to share, kind of have a little show and tell of what's similar or different in each other's work plans.
And then I guess taking that one step further, and forgive me if I miss this part, but the document that draft document from them, like how does that tie into their work plan, their work plan as it exists today? Just kind of thinking about how we would kind of mesh those two things together and potentially present it on behalf of, collectively on behalf of the two groups as opposed to the north side and the south side.
If I'm understanding the question correctly, so I think I was just trying to say before, the development criteria draft that they have is essentially them moving forward with one of the policy recommendations within their work plan.
Okay.
And so, how the north side and south side would come together collectively to move that forward at the city. I think, a conversation between the two groups around what changes Southside would want to make. So, where, as COSAR referenced, it refers to the 12 Northside Green Zone goals. It could, they drafted the development criteria before they had finalized their work plan. So that's one of the reasons why it's referring to those 12 goals rather than their work plan, which includes those 12 goals. So maybe even that adjustment is made to them, and then adding to refer to the Southside Green Zone for its set of goals and recommendations as well. And then any other adjustments that might be missing for Southside. Like one of the things that I'm seeing in the recommendations is that there isn't anything specifically talking about when the city is the developer, which is a unique case that we have in the Southside Green Zone. And so maybe that's an addition that Southside would want to make as a change to this, and see if the Northside was on board, and then again bring all of these together collectively. As Karen mentioned, there would be more power in that ask than if they were done separately.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. That makes more sense. So this is just like a piece of the pie, if you will, a piece of the larger work plans on both fronts.
Yep.
So I think maybe to prepare for our meeting in December, we can probably come up with a draft agenda, or is that something that we're expecting the Northside Green Zones to create? I'm just wondering what the structure of that meeting is going to look like.
Yeah, that is up for both bodies to craft. So it's not really up for either one or the other to carry that entire weight on their shoulders. You know, as the staff person for both, what I can do is sort of hear the perspectives of both. I have a meeting with the leadership from the Northside Green Zone tomorrow morning. I can share any thoughts or ideas that Southside has tonight with them tomorrow, and then kind of mesh those together and put together an agenda sort of on folks' behalf. If people are interested, I could kind of send that out for review beforehand, especially to like Kosar and Samara and Ashley, to get feedback on it. But I think, you know, as you're having the first meeting now, any ideas that you have, I can bring to them, to their leadership tomorrow morning, and use that as the base to craft the agenda off of. But right now it's an open slate. We can talk about anything.
Sounds good. Thanks. And I think if folks don't have any thoughts right now, maybe we can get back to this and maybe move forward with deciding if we're going to have a meeting for December. So I'll give it to Samara.
I'm not used to calling in, so I'm still getting used to muting and unmuting myself. So like Kosar said, we could maybe revisit this. But another question that we had for everyone is whether or not we want to hold our usual Southside Green Zone meeting on December 21st, or if we would want to cancel that because we're already having the joint Northside and Southside Green Zone meeting. So yeah, just kind of feeling out what people are, you know, what you all have like the capacity for and whatnot, because we don't want to, you know, ask y'all to come to 2 meetings when we're used to only 1. So yeah, like where's everybody at with that?
And Samara, did you want to mention any of the ideas that we had talked about if we did have a December meeting?
Yeah, that is a great idea. Thanks, Kelly. So when we were talking about this in our leadership meeting, we were thinking that if we do decide to do the December 21st meeting, what we could possibly include in our agenda for that night would be an annual report, which is something that's in our work plan. Just kind of looking back over the year and talking about what we've done, what the Southside Green Zone has done, over 2020. And then, yeah, we had just talked about making sure to like leave maybe some more time just for like check-ins, and maybe it being a bit more of like a lighthearted and a little bit more casual, perhaps. Just way to wrap up the year. Trying to think if there's anything else.
I think that's all we had talked about. I did add a third bullet on our little list here, Samara, so if that's throwing you off. There is also a program that our Public Works Department runs in their Stormwater Management Office, where people can get reduced cost on their stormwater charges on their city utility bill if they reduce the amount of impervious surface. So like if they put in more green covering or a rain garden or plant a tree or different things like that. And they're looking at how to build equity into that credit system. So the system exists already, but it has not been updated for like a decade or longer. And they are looking at the green zones and trying to think about what it would look like to maybe have like more or bonus credits in the green zone, so that if you reduced, to try and incentivize more pervious surface or more greenery in the green zones, where, one of the reasons that it was originally designated is because it does have a lower tree canopy levels, and it does have more cement and pavement and impervious ground cover. And so folks could maybe get even a larger discount or a higher percentage of a discount if they make those best practice improvements in the community. So that would be residential property or commercial property. So they're interested in coming to have a talk with you and the Northside Green Zone members to get input on that before they bring that forward as a policy change. So that's something that we could do in December if we had a meeting just with the Southside Green Zone, or we could wait for January.
Can I get a schedule check too on that? Would new members be joining for December, or would they be joining in January?
They would, so we would know that. That's a great question. So they would, I think, officially have been approved by December 21st. Because City Council's final meeting, I think, would be the 18th. So it'd literally be the Friday before that new members would be officially appointed. Good question.
But we wouldn't necessarily expect them to be there, but they could come. I guess I'm leaning towards the I'm 100% flexible either way. But if we did have a more casual meeting, maybe it could be new. We can invite the new folks and get to know folks better too, so that maybe we can really hit the ground running in January. There might also be some good debriefing from the combined meeting that we want to do at our meeting, or follow up, like quicker follow up kinds of things from the December 9th meeting too. Those were just some thoughts I had around trying to help make the decision.
I think I kind of missed the first part of what you were saying, where you're saying that you'd maybe want to invite the new members to this meeting so they can kind of get a feel for it before January.
Yeah, that was what I was proposing, or yes, inviting them, and if it was a more casual kind of meeting, getting to know them more before, if we can, if any of them come before our January meeting. So
absolutely, I really like that idea, and I know I personally would be able to commit to a second meeting, so that would be a yes from me. But still, I'm still very Curious to hear what everyone else has to say as well.
Could you remind us when the new members will be approved?
Yes, this is Kelly. The City Council would vote on their appointments the Friday before that December 21st meeting on the morning of December 18th.
Okay, thanks. Did you tell us how many people applied? I guess I might have missed that if you did.
This is Kelly again. No, I did not. We've had, I think there's 9 open spots, 6 voting members and 3 voting youth ambassadors. We have enough. So let's see, how did it break down? There are 4 applicants who meet the qualifications to be a voting member. So we could fill 4 of those 6 vacancies, and then 1 youth who applied who qualifies for the youth ambassador spot. There were a few other applicants, but they live just outside of the green zone boundary, and so would normally be a non-voting member, but we don't have any non-voting member seats open right now. So we're waiting. Cassie has been in communication with a couple folks at Little Earth who might be interested in applying. So if we can get those applications in soon, we might be able to appoint them to a couple more vacancies. But we are still short on the youth ambassadors.
So are you still taking applications then for the voting members?
Yeah, if you know anyone who's interested, please have them apply. They can apply at any time, and those applications are accepted by the city clerk's office and held until future appointments. And then just as a reminder, the appointment cycle for the 2-year period that you all are appointed to will be coming up in spring of 2016. Sorry, 2016. Where's that number coming from? 2021. Just going back 5 years. Everyone will reapply come like April or May for that like July 1 cycle start date.
Thank you.
And if folks don't want to decide right now or don't feel comfortable speaking up about whether they want to have a December 21st meeting, I can always poll you by text or email following up on this. But I am curious if there's anyone who knows that they won't be available on Monday, the December 21st.
Currently, my calendar is wide open on Monday, the 20th, so I don't have any particular concerns about hosting a meeting then or not. So I'm more than fine either way.
Ashley, I know, sorry to call you out. I know you've had conflicts most Mondays. Is that a date that you would be open, or do you have a conflict again?
Compared to the December. Hello? Oh,
Hey, Cassie.
happened. I'm sorry, were you asking me?
I was asking Ashley, but yeah, if you and Viviana are available, I'm curious. No. I'm interested whether you're available as well.
Go ahead, Ashley. I gotta look at my calendar.
Okay.
I also have to look at my calendar. So I am most likely available, especially if we're meeting earlier rather than later that evening, because I do have personal engagement that day. in the evening.
Okay. Yeah, and we could always do a shorter meeting. We could do a 1-hour meeting as like a get together with if the new members are able to join, and do a recap of the year, something lighter like that, as Samara was suggesting. But yeah, so it sounds like maybe there isn't a strong consensus either way, but there does seem like availability. So, the way we could play this is just kind of go forward with the meeting. It's already on the calendar, so there's nothing that needs to change there. And then I can follow up with individuals or with everyone kind of afterward via email to make sure that that still works for folks.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. And feel free to, if any conflicts come up, or if you have any ideas for what you want that meeting to look like, yeah, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Kelly, do you think we can move on to the next part?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Let me just make sure I'm at the right part of the agenda. Yeah, so I think we're going to spend most of the rest of the meeting just looking at, during our last meeting, we continued to narrow down and talk about new priorities. And so now we're going to, continue that conversation, kind of look at next steps to continue to work on those. So Kelly, if you're able to kind of guide us through that, and we can start that conversation.
Yeah, so as a reminder for everyone, the survey that you all filled out had a number of different projects or initiatives listed on them. The agenda listed out in order of sort of the scoring of those as priorities. The top one being the green zone development criteria, which COSAR went over. So this would be, again, working in partnership with the Northside green zone to move those forward. So we've kind of already covered that one. The next one was around air pollution and cumulative levels and effects analysis. So there are a couple bills around cumulative levels and effects and non-expiring air permits that the city's intergovernmental relations team has put forward on the legislative priorities for the 2021 legislative session. So basically every year the city adopts a list of priorities and sort of in bills or initiatives that it will support should they come up at the legislature. And so those are being proposed. So these bills have been introduced by Representative Fu Lee in past legislative sessions and either have not moved forward or haven't even gotten a hearing. So the city is basically saying that it wants to put more of its time and energy towards seeing those bills move forward. We've also been in conversation with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency around their legislative priorities and how there can be some sort of matching there so that the city and the state can support each other moving some of this environmental justice work forward. One of the things that they're interested in is a bill that was passed earlier this fall by the state of New Jersey that actually allows the state to deny a permit if it's demonstrated to cause an increase in health risks or damage to an already burdened community. And basically they want to do more research into that to see if that could be added to these other bills that have been introduced, and maybe, I don't know if it'd be combining them into kind of one EJ bill or what that would look like, but the state is interested in moving forward more EJ policy, and that could be one way to do it. And so this sort of area around air pollution and these protective bills, the Southside Green Zone and the Northside Green Zone would be, who are also interested in these, could be sort of monitoring the city's progress. We could be asking for regular updates on what's happening during the legislative session next winter and spring, and holding the city accountable to making sure that they are following up and keeping this top of mind. I haven't really thought of what other ways the Southside Green Zone would be directly involved as a body, but as individuals, you can always write to your legislators and advocate on behalf of yourself and your interests to your representatives. So that could be just, more education that we could do with the Green Zone or with the broader community around what these bills mean. So some ideas there. Karen, unfortunately, the city is not ready to take up a proactive stance on amortization. And so again, as a reminder for folks, that would be changing the state law to allow the city to remove an existing facility, like an industrial facility, if the city changed the zoning. So again, using Smith or Bituminous as an example, they are currently legally operating. The city's comprehensive plan is putting forward a rezoning process, and so those facilities will be rezoned. And if it was vacant land today, they would not be able to build those type of facilities. But because they're already existing, just rezoning them doesn't make those facilities have to shut down. The city does not have the authority to do that under current state law. It would require changing this law around amortization, which would allow the city to do that. And I think, and it's not so much that the city is against the amortization, it's just there's too many other things that it has committed a lot of staff time to for this upcoming legislative session. One of them is an asthma bill that it's been pushing for almost a decade now. And so it just doesn't have the staff capacity to pick up something that would be that big of a lift. But that's something that we can, as a body, the Southside Green Zone, can keep on the city council's radar, the intergovernmental relations team's radar for the next legislative session, and to reiterate that this is still a priority.
But I think too with the New Jersey bill. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, with the New Jersey bill, I think there would be a possibility for an existing permit to be denied also. If we could actually put the parallel on that completely.
Yep. Nope, that's a great point, Megan.
Well, just 2 points. The existing law does allow them to require the permit to be calibrated at a different threshold than than normally would be there for any other neighborhood that didn't have coverage by the existing cumulative health impacts law in the green zone right now. So it does have enforcement in it, and it's been used to enforce a stricter threshold probably 4 times already. So I'm not quite sure what the deal is. I mean, the MPCA has already done that with, they started out with the Med Console, they did it with Abbott Northwestern Hospital, they did it with the asphalt plant. I mean, there's a number of things. So I'm totally in support of Fooley's bill, but I don't think we should be saying that there isn't enforcement ability in the MPCA right now, because there is. The second point is, I guess I'm wondering, when you said the city has decided they don't want to try to deal with that. Actually, we're talking about 2 industries in the East Phillips. We're talking about the foundry and the asphalt plant. When you said this, Kelly, when you said the city says it doesn't want to change that law, it's kind of described in a funny way. I know it's hard for people to maybe grasp it just without a lot of background in it, and it has to do with zoning law and tax law and stuff. But basically, it's to say that those 2 facilities are not appropriate to be in a residential neighborhood anymore, and the rezoning should happen. And the excuse from the city has been, well, there's a state law that doesn't allow us to do that. And so there was a proposal that I and let's see, I guess what Senator Hayden had, that would have said, oh, we'll take away that state law. City, you can take responsibility to do this on your own now if you want to. We're not going to stop you with a state law. And that would have made the city much more accountable to the community about the kind of permits that are the kind of facilities, industrial facilities that are permitted in a residential neighborhood that is an environmental justice neighborhood, that is majority low-income people of color and Native people. And so the city saying they don't want to do that, I guess I want to know who to hold accountable for that, Kelly. Who is it that's saying they don't want that state law to change so the city would be responsible for that? Who did you talk to?
Yeah, Karen. So I spoke with my supervisor who spoke with the staff for intergovernmental relations. I'm not sure if that came down as a decision from staff or from policymakers. Again, part of the concern is capacity. So whereas before, when I think you've described in past meetings that when you introduced that law change previously, the city was actually against it.
Yeah.
Is that true? So the city,
not only
I think
were
the
they
distinction,
against, they were,
yeah.
Not only were they against it, they came and testified against the bill. Yeah. Committee.
Yeah, so I think the distinction now is the city isn't going to take an active stance against it. This is my interpretation. So is my understanding is it's not, it won't take any active stance against an amortization law change, but right now they don't have the capacity with the other commitments that they've made to take that on as its own initiative, as like the city doesn't have the capacity to find a legislator to author a bill and develop a coalition across the state to move that forward. They're putting pretty much all their eggs in the basket around this asthma bill that they've been trying to get moving forward, and then also want to provide capacity in these other bills that Fuli has introduced. So I just kind of want to make, it's kind of a fuzzy distinction, but just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well, so on behalf of the Southside Green Zone, I would ask us to do a motion that asks the city to clarify that they at least are not against the bill, because that would be a major step forward just for them to stop being against it. And so, I mean, if that's really true, and I think the second point of what you're talking about is, I would like to know if it's staff's recommendation or if it is actual, elected officials making that recommendation. I'd be surprised if it would be elected officials, but I would like to know if it is. So how do we clarify that? How can we get that clarified?
I can ask my supervisor. My guess is that it was staff saying they don't have the capacity, but I will clarify that.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. I really urge you to do that on behalf of the Southside Green Zone, because these two industries are killing us. I mean, it's not just whether staff who probably live in some other part of the community and don't have to breathe that air every day from the foundry and from the asphalt plant. It just is, I don't know. It's frustrating to hear that that's not a priority, but at least if they're deciding not to oppose it, I would like that, stated in writing or somehow, that we know that they're not going to come and testify. There are legislators who want to take it forward. I've talked to them.
Okay. That would be helpful to know, Karen, who those legislators are. Maybe it's possible our intergovernmental relations team isn't aware of that.
I'll ask them to contact, I don't know, whoever at the city they need to contact. Who would you suggest they contact?
The head of intergovernmental relations is Fatima Moore.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I guess I would just ask for our Southside Green Zone members, I guess we have a quorum to, to somehow make this clear that this is an important issue. We've talked about it so much in this forum, in our meetings. It's just several years worth of talking about it. about how important it is to get those two industries to stop polluting at the level that they're at. I don't know, maybe another person from the neighborhood wants to chime in on this too, but I just really hope that we would be united in that.
Well, Karen, you're welcome to make that motion and we can get a second and have discussion.
Okay, I'll move that we ask the city, and I don't know, two things, to clarify their position and to put it in writing to us. To the Southside Green Zone.
Is that all, Karen?
Well, I mean, I guess
Was
probably
all
that's
second
kind of wishy-washy. I guess it could be a stronger resolution would be to ask the city to reconsider its stance and actually support the must be stronger, that ask the city to find the capacity to support what the Southside Green Zone has put forward about the rezoning. We recommended that in at least I think 2 different times. So just to support what's already been our existing recommendations. To do it I guess to do it in terms of the legislative capacity. That's what they're saying they don't have.
I'll second. Cassandra Holmes.
Are there any questions or further discussion?
I'll just say I support it just because I think supporting it in as many ways and as many bills as possible. I think we can connect it to our work plan for sure, and addressing it in the work plan I think would be good in the resolution, and saying that there's potential for similar outcomes to be available. If I don't know, the environmental justice bill that New Jersey did was huge and momentous, and I don't know that it will. I don't know that I have faith in it to be passed in this upcoming legislature. I don't know that I have faith in an amortization bill either, but I think as many places where we can have it as possible is necessary, because essentially, there's potential for it to do the same thing, but I think an amortization bill would be much quicker before Smith and Bituminous' permits come up. That's what would be. I think the stars would all have to align for it to work for an environmental justice bill to be passed and this all to happen, whereas putting efforts into an amortization bill could result in the same thing potentially quicker. That's just me saying to you all, and also probably externally processing a little bit of making sure I understand. So yeah, I'm certainly supportive of a resolution to the city asking for this.
Hi, this is Tamara. I'm sorry, I know you've already said this, but Karen, could you just one more time clarify what this motion is asking?
Asking the city to find the capacity to support the amortization.
Got it. Thank you. Is there any more discussion, or should we vote?
Well, hearing none, I can call the roll. Samara?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Cassandra?
Yes.
Megan? Well, non-voting, but you can, I'll let you.
I support. I show
Yeah.
my support.
Who?
Megan as a non-voting member.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if
Um,
you take my name or not.
sorry, I'll try to speak more clearly. Mahubo?
Yes.
Kosar?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Viviana?
Yes. Wait. Now it's on. Yes.
Perfect, got it. Amanda, I know you're also non-voting, but if you wanted to make a statement in support or not.
Yes, definitely support. Thank you.
That motion passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Are there any other questions or discussion around air pollution? Otherwise, we can move into, those were the first two. So development criteria, which we covered earlier in the meeting, air pollution, a number of different policies or bills to support. And then the third priority topic was housing. And it was both the development of like vacant sites and development of affordable housing, and then also addressing homelessness. So I feel like to a certain extent, some of the development criteria may kind of tie in, that we discussed earlier, may tie into housing development, with the, community voice being involved when the city is selling land, whether it's for housing or other uses. But I wonder, Kosar, if you wanted to add anything to this discussion related to housing and development.
Yeah, so I think during our September call, when we had an opportunity to hear from folks around open properties and what does it look like to inquire upon those, I was able to connect with folks about the different properties that were city-owned lots that were up for development or potentially going to be up for development in the next couple of years or whatever it may be. And I was able to connect with city staff and inquire upon a couple of properties located in my neighborhood and in my ward. I will say that there are some, I guess, city goals around what types of development projects that they would like to see. I will share that the sites that I was interested in within my community. The city isn't interested in public financing, so providing any TIF support or whatever it may be for that development project. So I think ultimately that the pro forma structure for developing a particular lot in those areas that I inquired upon would need private dollars. So any capital that you are able to raise on by yourself to develop those sites. So I think in a sense, that is worrisome for me around the equity, around development in the communities that those lots are available in, which are oftentimes low income, predominantly BIPOC communities in areas of concentrated poverty, where if those community members were interested in developing those lots, they probably wouldn't be able to do so without any public financing or any public support. So that's kind of the feedback that I received. I also heard that those sites wouldn't be open for development in the next round of RFPs that would be available. So that's also interesting around just the dynamics of what would it require for a site to be open for development or open for inquiries to develop those sites or to even ideate around it as well. So that's just been my overall feedback and experience.
COSAR, did they say anything about why they wouldn't be looking for public financing on the ones that you inquired about?
Let me look back at the email.
Because yeah, it feels very arbitrary, and yeah, I'm totally curious if there's guidelines around it or something. I think you're asking some great questions for sure.
They just pretty much detailed that they do not plan to pursue an RFP for the site for the foreseeable future. They're open to hearing concepts that are, financially feasible without significant public subsidy, right? I think when we have a conversation around public subsidy or public financing, it is important to understand that, like, the areas in the communities that these sites are present within, and if community, if we were to adopt a equity scorecard of a sort, I think it would be important to really recognize and I think hold the city and other entities accountable that in order for community to actually invest within itself and to really have intentional ownership and equity development, it is necessary that there is significant public subsidy and financial opportunities open to them, considering that the systems in place have not offered the opportunity for those said community members to gain the capital to invest in development, right? That is sustainable and that is sound for a particular space that is open for development, which is why there is such a hindrance to folks coming from marginalized communities to invest in their communities and to have, intentional ownership in the spaces that they're, living within or working within. So that's kind of something that I have to like meddle with, and maybe it'll require a campaign amongst my community to really figure out what this will look like and maybe how we can finance this and bring some concepts to play. Although I think my fear is, when community does bring ideas and thoughts into play, that an RFP is triggered, and then ultimately those ideas are taken to develop the RFP, but then the community isn't selected to be the developer of the project. So, trying to figure out what are different ways to set ourselves up for success when embarking on such journeys is important, at least for me.
Are there any other questions for COSAR or thoughts about development in the community?
This is totally off topic, Kelly, but do you know I took the Hennepin County Citizens Academy a while ago. Do you know if the city has anything like that? It feels like we have it,
yeah.
To some extent here, but
Not that I'm aware of. Like I know the city has even struggled to have like orientation for boards and commission members around, how to participate in civic processes. I want to say there is something out of, so the fire department had some sort of the community emergency response teams that, and I don't know if they're doing those anymore. I think that's different than what you did with Hennepin County. But in terms of sort of community member leadership and capacity building, I think that's kind of maybe the closest thing the city has had.
Okay. It was just a thought as I was like, oh, I don't even know how it. So COSAR, kudos, because just even digging in this way. But yeah, it's like how is there how can the community even be active in a process when when it feels like as soon as the community is active, then it's like triggers something, and that's usually not ideal. So yeah, I just want to say I hear you, Kosar, and this is I think you're getting exactly to the crux of the challenge of just digging into this stuff, which is so important. So thank you.
No problem. And thanks to Kelly for providing just guidance around who to contact, just doing my research and due diligence prior to that, so that I was just educated about, what happened previously. So I will say for the site that I was inquiring upon, there was an RFP that previously existed. And I think they had no success around, folks who were interested in the site. And there isn't a contract agreement with the developer currently on the site either. So I think that's a plus. So I think really figuring out, whether there is a development contract in place for a particular lot or city-owned property in your neighborhood and community is important and essential, because if that already has occurred, that means that they've already went through the RFP process, were accepted, and that, the city is just waiting for the developer to then, actually develop and invest on the site. So I think if that is the case, then really then getting in touch with the developer and having those conversations around, what do they envision for the site? Could there be an opportunity for some community ownership? I think of if they're developing a multi-unit apartment rate at market rate pricing, could they provide an opportunity for community members to have access to the store frontage, like the street frontage, and apply retail, or a business incubator or a art studio or some type of community oriented space within the development project. I think that's one thing that I think about, if they're already far end into the development performa, starting to think about that and figuring out how to best align community resources to, I guess, partner with the developer to meet some community-oriented goals.
Yeah, that's super helpful, Kosar, and I also second what Megan has shared about her appreciation for what you've dug into here. And I wonder, I think one way we could also kind of keep this conversation alive is, as people are out and about in their neighborhoods, if you see a property that you either know is vacant or not occupied, or is if you know that it's city owned or county owned, or you're not sure, and you want to check in, you have questions about who owns this, what are the plans for it, that's something that we can always ask. It was Katie and Roxanne who visited us a couple months ago. We can always ask them some of these questions that Kosar has been asking about the sites that she's interested in. So, is this something that's going to be sold or opened for RFP through any of the city programs? Is there already a contract with a developer for it, and those kinds of things? So as folks have properties in question, definitely bring them forward to this group, or you can email me directly too.
Yeah, and I'm more than open to having conversations like this with folks, just to ideate and figure out how can we use our collective energies and powers and thoughts to really figure out what opportunities exist within our communities, and maybe our communities can partner together on some of this work as well. There might be certain neighborhoods that are more ripe for an opportunity for an RFP than my neighborhood, but I may be able to provide my expertise and my background knowledge in urban planning and economic development and just overall finance development as well, just a performa or just an overall proposal or whatever else it may be, or even being able to address those various different questions with city staff in a way that is effective and is solutions oriented. So I'm more than open to that as well.
Great. The next priority from our survey was the Hiawatha campus or Roof Depot. I don't have any updates on that, but even bringing this up, I'm reminded that I should check in with my supervisor, with Kim Havey, and see if he knows any more, or if the city's anticipating the EAW comment period to be opening up, environmental assessment worksheet comment period to be opening up anytime soon, because I believe that timeline is what we had been told previously would be around now. But I'm wondering if Karen or Cassie, you have any updates on the lawsuit?
I was gonna say, go
Kathy?
ahead, Karen. I don't really have any updates on the lawsuit from what we talked about in our last meeting. But Karen, if you want, you can share our meeting today with Andrea Jenkins, if you'd like, or if it's appropriate. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Let's see. Okay, I could do that. I just want to make sure that I'm answering the question first that you were asking. You were saying, what is the status of the lawsuit? Is that what you were saying, Kelly?
Yeah, I was asking if you had an update on that, but I think just any general update on the Roof Depot project.
Okay, well, let's see. Maybe Cassie and I can do this jointly. I'll do a little bit on the lawsuit. There was a hearing. I'm trying to remember. I think the last meeting we hadn't had a hearing yet, had we?
No, just what we had talked about last time. About the judge.
Okay. So we had
Yep.
We had a hearing, and the judge told the city attorney a couple of things. One of them was to cooperate more with the neighborhood, the community, actually as represented by our attorney, and provide the data that was being requested. There's a lot of legal terms here. Just hold on 1 second. They're in a phase now called discovery, where the city needs to share the information that the neighborhood has been asking about through our attorney for a number of things, including their processes and who made what decisions and that sort of thing. And it's a very complex part of the process right now, but it's a very expensive part for the neighborhood. We have to raise money to help our attorney get the information sorted through, and
for the bond.
That's right. Why don't you do that part? I'll just finish this one little part about the attorney. So one of the things that we know, one of the things that happened was the judge told the city to not try to pull a fast one. Was his exact words, because the city attorney was saying they hadn't gotten emails when they'd gotten them and that sort of thing. So I guess we're feeling a little bit supported by the judge to get the process kind of on track, and it is really interesting. I just want to say, when those phrases like "you can't fight City Hall," I guess I really know what it means now, because it's really difficult when you're just a very low income neighborhood to try to stand up and ask for your basic environmental rights, human rights. And one of the things we have to do is possibly to raise a bond. And Cassie, why don't you say more about that, because it's daunting.
Well, the only thing that I understand from it and that I get is that because we're holding them up, taking them to court, we have to pay something called a bond, and it's about $50,000, and that's on the cheap end. But the money they use to get the land and that they'll be using against us in court is our taxpayer dollars, is my understanding. So I'm paying for them in court, as long as trying to find money to help pay for us in court. So my taxpayer dollars is helping them to fight against my community. And that just pisses me off royally. So I guess that's like where we were still. There's nothing that's changed, and you guys know how I felt about that. I was kind of in a bad way at our last meeting, and really upset. And so then we had a meeting today with Andrea Jenkins, and just that, I guess from my understanding from this meeting was that the city is not as dug in or committed to this project at the moment, and that we may have a chance at like being successful on at least a part of our vision or most of our vision, as long as we could come up with the money to pay what they paid for it, which was like 6.8 million. And when the community first wanted to get that property, I think it was down to like 5 million or something like that. And there was people from the Dakotas and stuff like that who were actually wanting to put the money in. So
Yeah.
now we're like almost starting fresh. And I don't know, Carrie, I mean, you probably could say it better than I could.
No, you did great. I would just add that we have some potential investors who would help us keep our community vision, and that's what we're talking right now with at least one city council member, and we're hoping that there will be buy-in by the others. So said it, we're hopeful.
That is super helpful update. Thank you for both of you for sharing and for committing to your community on this work. Are there any questions or comments from Southside Green Zone members? I also want to recognize we've just got about 9 minutes left.
This is Samara. I just wanted to say thanks to both of you again for all the work that you're doing. It's really important. And yeah, really appreciate all the effort that you're putting into this.
Thank you. I want to say Southside Green Council has been a great support. It means a lot to have these meetings and hear those kinds of words. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So maybe with our last couple of minutes, we want to circle back to our first discussion item, which was around preparing for the joint Northside Southside meeting. I wonder if anyone has more ideas around what they would like to see on the agenda in that meeting.
I have to get going, so I will just add my 2 cents and then sign off. But I just want to add, I think especially after COSAR's comments and talking about development, I really, as much as I would love to kind of like present on our work plans, maybe we can commit to doing some homework. I was reading through the Northside's work plan also, as we were talking about this a little bit earlier. And I will commit to reading it more thoroughly. But I would really personally love to really dig into what either a combined or a separate equity scorecard would look like, and to talk about that at the meeting for sure. Or whatever the document we went over first. What is it called?
The development criteria.
Development criteria, yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Megan.
Could I ask a comment about that, Shirley Heyer?
Yeah, go for it, Shirley.
Yes, there's a list of about 12 housing developers that are questioning the validity of the current document and how to build affordable housing. And I got a copy today from Midtown, a board member. I think it's worth looking at because the developers are major developers who have done for affordable housing, and they think that it would only promote more gentrification and not meet the goals of equity or economic equity and racial disbursement throughout the city. So I think it's worth looking at that document too.
Thank you, Shirley. Is that something that you could email me that I could share with everyone?
Yeah, as soon as this meeting's over, I'll text it forward to you. Send it
Okay,
to you.
awesome. And I'm wondering, is that on the rezoning that the city's doing following the comprehensive plan, or is it a specific policy?
It's part of the 2040 plan.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And it's quite extensive, the points they make.
Yeah. No, I think that would be really helpful to have. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It was just sent around yesterday, I think. Last night, something like that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Maybe folks we haven't heard from a lot tonight. Mahubo, Ashley, Amanda, any ideas for the joint meeting with Southside Green Zones? Or sorry, with Northside Green Zone?
I also think it's a good idea that the best use of our time might be to, instead of presenting our whole work plans, would just be to like really do a bit of like reading of their work plan before we meet, and kind of come to the meeting with ways we think we can like add to or contribute to their work plan, like the development ideas that COSAR has been working on. And the other thing there was another thing that we were talking about that I just can't think of what it was. But I feel like we had two really strong, I think maybe Kelly, you brought it up. There were two like stronger ideas that were really sticking out, that, yeah, those two topics that really kind of stood out as like things that could, that the Southside Green Zone could really add to that document to make it stronger, and also kind of meet the things that we're already working on here.
Oh, I remember. It was, when the city is going to develop property, not just private developers. I think that was one thing I mentioned.
Yep.
Mahubo, any thoughts on your end?
Not anything in particular, just kind of agree with what everyone's saying. It's kind of hard not to like have the screen in front of me and trying to take notes, but I agree with specifically what we talked about last. Just trying to see their plan and just kind of bouncing ideas off. I think it's a really good idea.
Great, thank you. Well, I will definitely bring this up when I talk with the Northside Green Zone leadership tomorrow morning, and then we'll let you know if there are any like significant thoughts that are different, that kind of deviate from that idea from Northside Green Zone members. Otherwise, I think we could probably expect that to be a good portion of the discussion, as well as what Samara mentioned earlier, which was just having some time to chat and get to know each other, since these groups haven't come together before. With 2 minutes left, are there any announcements that you all have or any parting thoughts before we say goodnight? Make sure to check out the announcements that are on the agenda. It lists the next couple budget markups that the City Council has, as well as the 2 December public hearings on the budget. There is a community conversation on mobility hubs on December 1st. I believe stipends are available if you're interested in participating. And then now that the census is done, redistricting is a conversation that will be starting up. And there is a session that Nexus Community Partners is hosting on what's the whole deal on redistricting and why do we care? Oh, and also Hennepin County is doing their climate action plan. And if you haven't taken the survey yet, I would recommend that as well. I will drop that link in the chat.
This is Samara. I don't have any announcements or anything, but I guess just going back to the December 21st meeting, just make sure to reach out if you have any, like anything, any reasons why you think it would be better not to do it or anything you'd want to add to the agenda. But it sounds like there's not really any strong opposition, so yeah.
All right, you want to bring us to a close, Mara?
Oh, sure. I don't know if there's a formal way to close this, but thanks everyone for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. Always good to hear from you all. Make sure to come to the December 9th joint meeting. Is there anything else, or?
No, I think we're good.
Great, cool. Yeah, have a good night, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye, thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Night.